Vice President Maybelline was making the rounds, attempting to defend his boss and the chairman of the FCC with a new fairy tale even a 5-year-old wouldn't believe.
Celebrities are rallying to his cause, saying this is a First Amendment assault being carried out by the FCC, Brendan Carr, and by the President of the United States himself. And to that, you say?
Well, there are two things. First of all, I'd like them to tell me exactly what Brendan Carr did to have Jimmy Kimmel taken off the air, because number one, he is currently on the air, and to the extent that he isn't in certain stations, it's because he's not funny and because his ratings aren't very good.
I have some good news for you, J-Dog. We're back on all this.
The studio was set, the crowd was waiting, and an unusual sense of anticipation filled the room when Jimmy Kimmel finally walked into the spotlight. There was a brief pause that seemed to signal he had something specific in mind. He knew exactly where he wanted to steer the conversation. And at the center of it all was Jade Vance and a statement the vice president had recently made during an appearance on Fox News.
First of all, Kimmel was taken off the air because he had low ratings, because the late-night talk show host model was not doing particularly well, and let's be honest, because he had become so politically unhinged that I think he wasn't particularly funny. Now, the FCC chairman, Brendan Carr, put out a couple of tweets, but the government took no action. We did literally nothing to try to take Jimmy Kimmel off the air. We believe in free speech. We also believe in the right of a television station or a network to cancel somebody because of low ratings. And I think it's a little bit rich. The second point I make, Rashad, is it's a little bit rich for people to say that somehow we're engaged in censorship when literally every day, including yesterday, we found out that Google and YouTube were censoring information at the height of COVID at the direction of the Biden administration. So if we're looking for real sources of the government driving censorship, we should be looking at the policies of the Biden administration. We absolutely reject censorship in the Trump administration. We don't want to prevent anybody from speaking their mind, but if a TV station wants to cancel a guy because he's not funny, that's...
What made this moment stand out was that it involved much more than a joke that earned laughs from the audience. Hidden beneath the humor was a response rooted in documented events rather than rumors or partisan talking points. Kimmel was not building his case on assumptions or internet speculation. Instead, he relied on information that anyone could examine for themselves. By the time he decided to publicly address the controversy, both Nexstar and Sinclair, two of the country's largest station groups that had previously stopped airing the program, had already restored the show. To understand why that development mattered, it is important to revisit how the situation unfolded. The controversy first erupted after Kimmel was removed from the air for 6 days following a monologue that triggered intense online backlash. Although Disney eventually brought him back, several affiliate stations continued keeping the program off their schedules even after the official suspension had ended. That extended absence became one of the biggest talking points surrounding the controversy and ended up shaping much of what followed.
Up your bullshit. Go on.
There's something else that's important here, Laura, which is that these broadcast companies, ABC, NBC, CBS, they enjoy the public airwaves because they serve the public interest. So I actually think that we should be having a conversation about whether these companies are serving the public interest. That's actually totally separate from the Jimmy Kimmel issue because nothing happened to him. He's currently on the air, and to the extent that he's not, it's because advertisers don't like him because his ratings aren't very good.
My ratings aren't very good. Last time I checked, your ratings were somewhere between a hair in your salad and chlamydia. In 3.5 years, I'm not the one who's going to be doing mascara tutorials on YouTube. How did we wind up with a president and a vice president who wear more makeup than Kylie Jenner and Lady Gaga combined? The President of the United States made it very clear he wants to see me and the hundreds of people who work here fired from our jobs. Our leader celebrates Americans losing their livelihoods because he can't take a joke. He was somehow able to squeeze Colbert out of CBS. Then he turned his sights on me, and now he's openly rooting for NBC to fire Jimmy Fallon and Seth Meyers and the hundreds of Americans who work for their shows who don't.
I'm a never Trump guy, never liked him. terrible candidate, idiot if you voted for him, might be America's Hitler, might be a cynical a-hole, cultural heroine, noxious and reprehensible.
Look, I was wrong about Donald Trump. I didn't think he was going to be a good president, Brett. He was a great president.
I didn't know you meant that.
As the situation continued making headlines, Donald Trump openly praised what was happening, while J.D. Vance used the controversy as evidence that Jimmy Kimmel had supposedly lost the support of viewers. For a period of time, that narrative seemed to gain momentum. However, events soon began moving in a different direction. Sinclair eventually reversed course and restored the program, and Nexstar soon followed with the same decision. Suddenly, claims that the show was collapsing became increasingly difficult to defend, as audiences across the country once again had access to the program, and live crowds continued showing up in large numbers to watch Kimmel's latest performances. Seeing the opportunity in front of him, Kimmel turned the controversy itself into comedy. What initially appeared to be a debate surrounding a temporary suspension quickly grew into something much larger. The discussion expanded beyond a single incident and became focused on how the story developed, who was influencing the public narrative, and whether audiences were hearing the complete picture.
It's been overwhelming. I've heard from a lot of people over the last 6 days. I've heard from all the people in the world over the last 6 days. Everyone I have ever met has reached out 10 or 11 times. Weird characters from my past are the guy who fired me from my first radio job in Seattle, where we are not airing tonight, by the way. Sorry, Seattle. His name is Larry. In 1989, Larry tried to force me to do a bit called Jokes for Donuts, where people would call in with a joke and I would give them donuts. I refused to do it, and then I made a lot of fun of Larry for suggesting it, and eventually Larry fired me, and I had to move back in with my parents. But even he wrote in to cheer me up. Thank you, Larry, and I want to thank everyone.
The developments that followed only seemed to strengthen Kimmel's position. His return brought some of the strongest ratings the show had enjoyed in years, and even after the first wave of attention faded, audience numbers remained noticeably stronger than they had been before the suspension. That is not usually the pattern associated with a show that critics claim is losing its importance. While J.D. Vance continued presenting his version of events, Kimmel had something far harder to ignore. He had results. The numbers themselves painted the picture. One side leaned on political messaging, while the other pointed to ratings figures, wider station distribution, and viewers who continued showing strong interest in the program. Even as political voices attempted to minimize the significance of the controversy, Kimmel kept shifting attention toward the bigger story developing behind the scenes, raising questions that many observers believed deserved closer examination.
All week to list all of them, but some that I do especially want to mention are my fellow late-night talk show hosts, my friend Stephen Colbert, who found himself in this predicament, my friends Jon Stewart, Seth Meyers, Jimmy Fallon, John Oliver, Conan O'Brien, James Corden, Arsenio, Kathy, Wanda, Chelsea, even Jay. Sometimes I wonder in what world is the vice president of the United States calling into a giant-toothed podcast host to badmouth me and the people who watch this show.
There are these judges. Judge Boasberg comes to mind. Lots of judges who are trying to basically say the president can't exercise the powers.
As the controversy expanded, lawmakers and prominent figures within the media world added another dimension to the story. FAC Commissioner Brendan Kerr later clarified that he had never threatened broadcast licenses and explained that his concerns had centered on possible distortion rather than punishment. Even so, many people focused less on individual statements and more on the overall sequence of events. First, the show disappeared from the air. Then public pressure surrounding the controversy intensified. Disney eventually reinstated Kimmel, and affiliate stations slowly began bringing the program back as well. By the time Kimmel returned to the spotlight, he had already transformed the entire ordeal into material for his monologue. That is why the debate eventually became about much more than ratings or viewer totals. At its heart, the controversy raised broader questions involving influence, public pressure, and the ways narratives are shaped and managed behind the scenes when public fallout begins to grow.
He really is running the country like it's one of his businesses. He said he would. Just to give you some perspective, the government being shut down is even worse than when it's up and running. Republicans would like you to believe that Democrats shut the government down. But the bill they wanted the Democrats to sign would knock out about 15 million Americans from health insurance. If this bill passes, your health insurance premiums could go up 75%. So there was no way the Democrats could vote for it. It's like like going to dinner and the waiter says, you must order lasagna. The chef made it today. And a bunch of you are going to get food poisoning from it. But if you don't eat it, you've ruined the meal. That's the Garfield version of what's going on.
When Jimmy Kimmel stepped onto the stage in Brooklyn, he did not stop after delivering one memorable punchline. Instead, he kept the energy alive by firing off joke after joke throughout the segment. The now famous Vice President Maybelline line was only the starting point. From there, Kimmel poked fun at what he described as an obsession with appearance and image, joking that he had managed to go through most of his life without needing to learn anything about mascara tutorials. But before long, the humor shifted toward a more serious subject. He joked about the release of files connected to Amelia Earhart, while suggesting that other controversies deserved much greater public attention. Behind the laughs, critics saw a larger message. Many argued that the joke highlighted a pattern people have noticed for years, one where attention often moves away from uncomfortable topics and toward safer issues that carry less political risk. By combining comedy with criticism, Kimmel transformed a series of punchlines into a broader discussion about how public narratives are created and directed.
Lining to the shutdown, according to their official website, during the shutdown, our friends at the FCC will cease their response to consumer complaint and inquiry phone lines, which I'm not a lawyer, but I think means we can now say whatever we want on TV. To being a direct violation of the First Amendment is not a particularly intelligent threat to make in public. Ted Cruz said he sounded like a mafioso. Although, I don't know, if you want to hear a mob boss make a threat like that, you have to hide a microphone in a deli and park outside in a van with a tape recorder all night long. This genius said it on a podcast. Brendan Carr is the most embarrassing car Republicans have embraced since this.
How long you worked here?
A year.
Okay. Donut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which donut, though?
Just whatever makes sense. No pickles. Hold the pickles.
Oh, well, no, I can get that for you.
One of the biggest reasons Jimmy Kimmel's humor continues to resonate with viewers is his knack for pointing out inconsistencies that many people have already noticed for themselves. Again and again, he zeroes in on moments where public statements seem completely disconnected from what audiences are actually seeing. In this particular case, he focused on the striking contrast between anti-elite political messaging and the images of wealth, status, and luxury that critics argued painted a very different picture. That contrast became fertile ground for comedy because it touched on something many viewers believed they already understood, allowing the jokes to land with even greater force.
Meddling where they shouldn't under many administrations, but it wasn't always like this. There was an FCC commissioner back in 2022 who worked under Joe Biden who was spot on. He wrote, "President Biden is right. Political satire is one of the oldest and most important forms of free speech. It challenges those in power while using humor to draw more people into the discussion. That's why people in influential positions have always targeted it for censorship." You know who wrote that? FCC Commissioner Brendan Carr. Here, our freedom to speak is what they admire most about this country. And that's something I'm embarrassed to say I took for granted until they pulled my friend Steven off the air and tried to coerce the affiliates who run our show in the cities that you live in to take my show off the air. That's not legal. That's not American. That is un-American, and it is so dangerous.
The reaction from the audience was anything but random. People laughed because they were already familiar with the background surrounding the jokes and had watched the controversy unfold in real time. That context gave the punchlines their power, because the humor was directly connected to events viewers had been following for weeks. Yet the story was far from over. As the debate continued, Vance reportedly maintained that Kimmel's problems stemmed from declining ratings. Conservative commentators also attempted to tie the suspension to Disney's broader financial difficulties and the challenges facing the streaming business, arguing that those issues explained the entire situation. But that explanation became harder and harder to defend as Kimmel's return continued attracting attention and audience engagement remained strong. Week after week, viewers kept tuning in, and with each passing episode, the argument that audiences had abandoned the show became increasingly difficult to sustain.
Me creepy, cringy, awkward, that I give people something called the ick. They want you to think that I can't order a simple donut.
Was appointed chairman of the FCC by this former crusader for free speech.
If we don't have free speech, then we just don't have a free country. It's as simple as that. If this most fundamental right is allowed to perish, then the rest of our rights and liberties will topple. Just like dominoes, one by one, they'll go down.
That was also in 2022. And I wonder, how did that guy turn into this guy?
Who would you like to see replace Kimmel on late night?
Well, a lot of people, anybody could replace him. The guy had no talent. Kimmel look, he was fired, he had no talent. He's a whack job, but he had no talent, and more importantly than talent, he had no.
Part of what made Kimmel's response so effective was the method behind it. Rather than relying on emotional appeals or dramatic accusations, he based his argument on details that could be checked and verified. He pointed to station groups, ratings figures, timelines, and distribution decisions, allowing audiences to compare those facts with the rumors circulating online and decide for themselves what made the most sense. That approach gave his argument added credibility because it felt less like a political fight and more like evidence being laid out for public examination. The Brooklyn monologue succeeded because Kimmel trusted the facts to do the heavy lifting. There was no need for shouting, theatrical outrage, or exaggerated reactions. Instead, he carefully arranged the information in a way that highlighted contradictions without explicitly telling viewers what conclusion they should reach. While GD Vance continued focusing on ratings, stations across the country were already bringing Kimmel's show back to their schedules. Audiences did not need complicated charts or lengthy explanations to understand what was happening. They heard the jokes, recognized the facts behind them, and quickly understood the message Kimmel was delivering.
How do you assess the legal battles here?
Yeah, I bet all those judges are huge fans of Jimmy Kimmel, by the way. But I think, Vince, that, one, we have an appeals problem.
Looking back on the controversy as a whole, the chain of events becomes surprisingly clear. Jimmy Kimmel was suspended by AP for 6 days after a monologue triggered widespread backlash. Donald Trump openly praised the decision, and JD Vance later appeared on Fox News, presenting the incident as proof that Kimmel had lost viewers and relevance. Although ABC eventually restored the show, several major station groups, including Sinclair and Nexstar, kept the program off their schedules for an extended period. But as public scrutiny intensified and national attention surrounding the controversy grew, the situation began to change. Sinclair ultimately reversed course. Nexstar soon followed, and FCC Commissioner Brendan Kerr later clarified his remarks regarding the matter. Viewed from beginning to end, the timeline reveals a story that started as a television controversy, but gradually expanded into a much broader debate involving ratings, media influence, political pressure, and public perception.
Look, it's just me, Jimmy, the chairman of the FCC, gently suggesting that you gently shut the up.
But you can't say that. That's a violation of free speech.
Oh, yeah, about that. Speech, it ain't free no more.
What? It's not free no more?
Yeah, we're charging by the word now.
You're charging by the word? How much are you charging?
Depends on what you want to say. Like, you want to say something nice about the president's beautiful, thick yellow hair, or how he can do his makeup better than any broad. That's free.
When Jimmy Kimmel finally returned to the stage in Brooklyn, he wasted little time addressing the controversy directly. He referenced GD Vance's comments, reminded viewers that major stations had restored his program, and then delivered the now widely discussed Vice President Maybelline joke with a grin that immediately sent waves of laughter through the audience. It was a moment that perfectly captured his ability to mix humor with commentary while keeping the crowd completely engaged.
I agree with many of those people on most subjects. Some of the things they say even make me want to throw up. It takes courage for them to speak out against this administration, and they did, and they deserve credit for it. And thanks for telling their followers that our government cannot be allowed to control what we do and do not say on television, and that we have to stand up to it. I've been hearing a lot about what I need to say and do tonight, and the truth is, I don't think what I have to say is going to make much of a difference. If you like me, you like me. If you don't.
So what is the biggest lesson to take away from everything that unfolded? In many respects, the answer comes down to preparation and credibility. J.D. Vance entered the debate with a claim, while Jimmy Kimmel responded with evidence. That difference helps explain why the segment connected so strongly with audiences. The jokes worked because they were built around information viewers could examine for themselves. Kimmel did not rely on sensational accusations, dramatic twists, or over-the-top rhetoric to make his case. Instead, he simply repeated Vance's remarks, pointed to the growing number of stations that had restored his show, and allowed the facts themselves to tell the story. That approach gave the segment a level of authenticity that many viewers found difficult to ignore, turning a comedy monologue into one of the most discussed moments in late-night television.
If that guy walked into your office and told you he was there to start making cuts.
I have friends who met a husband, a wife, a boyfriend, a girlfriend, who met the best man at their wedding at Turning Points USA because it was an organization of patriots dedicated to making this country the very...
And that brings the focus back to the viewers, because moments like these often generate some of the strongest reactions. Whether you thought the Vice President Mabel and jokes stole the show, or believed another punchline landed even better, there is little doubt that Kimmel succeeded in transforming a political controversy into one of the most talked about late-night moments in recent memory. If you had a favorite line from the segment, be sure to share it in the comments. And if you followed the controversy from the very beginning, watching each station decision and every public response as the story developed, let everyone know which moment stood out to you the most. As always, if you enjoy breaking down major political and media stories as they unfold, make sure to subscribe and stay tuned, because whenever competing narratives collide with real-world results, the story often becomes much more fascinating than anyone initially expected.
Chairman of the FCC.
You don't need to know my name, and I am the new chairman of the FCC.
You were appointed FCC chairman by Donald Trump?
Sir Trump, yes. I used to do some work for the man here and there in Atlantic City.
But did I just hear you on the phone threatening Whoopi Goldberg?
No, I would never threaten Miss Goldstein. I was just teaching her a lesson about consequences.
No, well, pardon me for saying so. Maybe you're the wrong guy to talk to, but it seems like the FCC is using mob tactics to suppress free speech.
What the did you just say?
My mother.
We are definitely not driving, Dr. The brunt of the effect of the shutdown, it will be felt right here in New York. To punish you for disliking him, Trump is putting $18 billion worth of New York City infrastructure projects, like the new rail tunnels under the Hudson and the 2nd Avenue subway project, on hold to make sure the money isn't being used to support DEI. Apparently, they think trans stands for transportation over there, and they want to stop it. This is clearly an abuse of power to punish the city. And New York City infrastructure projects are not supposed to be delayed because Trump wants to strong-arm Democrats into cutting health care. They're supposed to be delayed because they're New York City infrastructure projects.